people, there's a particular lens that I use. It's important that developing countries are able to make the most of the demographic dividend. Hence, kind of skilling of young people, appropriate skilling of young people, particularly those living in poverty or even extreme poverty, and linking them up with markets is a priority. So, and also while we do this, it's important, this is something that Yogesh picks up and does in his work. It's important to keep in mind the intersectionality between poverty and other forms of deprivation, such as gender, ethnicity, caste, disability, etc. And I think Yogesh has done some interesting work in disability in Uganda, and to address multiple vulnerabilities as we try and create market access for extreme poor populations. So, I've been a development and humanitarian practitioner for over 3 decades now, and I can certainly speak for myself and many of my colleagues that many of us are still struggling to address market failures. We are still trying to figure out ways by which we can make markets work for the poor. We talk about it a lot, but there are, beyond a point, we find if we are having a lot of barriers, we face a lot of barriers. So, in this context, I feel Yogesh's work is particularly significant. It's seminal in many ways because with the 5 typologies that he and his colleagues have developed, and of course his other related work, he has given us some important leads on how we can translate our intention into practice in terms of making markets work for extreme poor. So, I have, and I can say for myself again that I've already shared Yogesh's papers with my colleagues in Save the Children International, and it's already generated a lot of buzz and interest within my organization. So clearly, this is new thinking that Yogesh has done, which many of us haven't, in organizations haven't. So hence, I'm sure that you all will find today's session useful. And with that, I'll hand over the floor to Yogesh. And after Yogesh finishes his presentation, which will be for about 20-25 minutes, I will start the discussion with probably a couple of questions, and then we can open it up to the floor, if that's okay with everyone. All good?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Shuman, for that introduction. And it's such a pleasure. It's very, very special for me to be here and to actually see so many friends, many after a very long time. And it's so nice just to be speaking to you. So I'm really thankful to Sandeep and Nikhil and Shuman and all the other the IFM Alumni Association for giving me this opportunity. I'm just so happy to see everybody and to share some of my work and also open up some discussion. So that's why when I was speaking with Shuman, I said maybe I can present something for about 15-20 minutes, and then we can actually have a discussion. So with that, let me start. Let me straight away get into the topic. Let me share my screen. Can you see it? Shuman, is the
yes we can, Yogesh.
Yeah, we can see it. It's
perfect.
visible.
Perfect. So the work I'll be presenting even today, although this speaks about my own work, because after passing out from IFM, I have been working in this space of sustainable livelihoods market development. So a lot of this is my experience in the field, close to 20 years. But more recently, I have partnered with the Institute of Development Studies and a range of development partners, looking at what Shuman was describing, looking at the role of markets in extreme poverty and what role they can play in reducing that. So before I actually go into that, I thought it'll be important to sort of set some context. Because we live in a very noisy, complicated world, and there's so many approaches when we talk about extreme poverty. There are so many players in this ecosystem. So I thought let's start with some context, and then that will help particularly talk about these market-based approaches. So I mean, and I sort of situate this in sort of 3 waves of development as we frame it. here at the Coady Institute when we talk about development more broadly. So let me talk about this, like what these three waves are, and where the market-based approaches fit in that. So number one is, we live in very noisy, complicated world where the emergencies, whether it is conflict, war, now climate change, natural emergencies, the intensity of these is increasing. I mean, even now, as we speak today, there are close to 180 places where active conflict is going on. So there's a lot of emergency, and then there is a response to that emergency in terms of aid by the governments, by international organization, by local communities, by civil society. So there is this whole body of work around emergency, and then a response to that emergency. There are set approaches, there are methodologies, there are funds which operate in this space, and a lot of humanitarian work that takes place there. So that's like one wave of development, and that is actually continuous. It's ongoing because these emergencies are happening more and more. Now, once you are over an emergency, then there is this whole work of rebuilding, and that's what we sort of term as livelihoods and rights. So all the work around rebuilding, rehabilitation, health, education, agriculture, gender, building civil society, and a lot of the work around ensuring rights. And again, it's a whole body of work where there are international organizations, national governments, civil society. They are doing that work. And in both of those waves, you try to address extreme marginalization, you try to address extreme poverty. Now, the third wave is about the market and enterprise development. And that's where I think most of the work around market development, value chain, making market work for the poor, enterprise development is situated. Now, all these three approaches address poverty. And in our conversation today, I wanted to focus on the last one, enterprise and market development. That are these approaches actually able to address extreme poverty? Are they able to include the most marginalized in the society? Now, this whole work, and when I specifically talk about market-based approaches, what exactly I'm speaking. So just to sort of give some definition, when I say about market-based approaches, these are initiatives, these are programs that expand access or improve the quality of livelihood opportunities for the most marginalized in order to improve their well-being. And this may include activities that help people access market, so market push, but also a market pull for the goods and services that the most marginalized produce. And this is by identifying their assets, strengthening and creating demand for their goods and services. And I'll talk about the push and pull and what exactly it is and how it happens through some of the examples that I'm going to share later on. But the key focus is the long-term viability of that actually builds resilience and as you integrate the most marginalized into the market system. Now, this work, particularly looking at extreme marginalization and if the market can play a role there, this work we started sometime around the same time when the Sustainable Development Goals were conceptualized, 2014, 2015. And one core value of the Sustainable Goals were leaving no one behind. And at that point in time, Rockefeller Foundation and some other donors, they really wanted to see, like, is there a systematic analysis of looking at market-based approaches and their impact on extreme poverty. So we actually got into, we picked up that project, and we looked at around 140 examples where we were actually going and looking for approaches where efforts have been made to integrate the most marginalized into enterprise development, into market development activities. And so this was the genesis of this work. And we looked at these examples, interviewed, did some field work that concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa. And then we interviewed some of the leaders who were actually implementing this. And it was the same time, while it was during the SDGs, but also the Ford Foundation, they had started this graduation model, the graduation approach to helping the most marginalized. So we also, there are some examples where we also looked at the results of those. Now, so this is a market-based approach, and when we talk when we looked at extreme marginalization, we just didn't look at that that standard economic marginalization where you look at, okay, in today there are 700 million people who live on $2.50. Yeah, that's one aspect of it. But we really looked at the intersection of economic and social exclusion. So on one hand, that economic that poverty line is one thing, but then there is social marginalization due to norms, gender, caste, ethnicity, disability, and various other factors that pushes people towards marginalization and discrimination, which actually leaves them with very low status and power. So we were actually not just looking at the economic marginalization, we were actually looking at the intersection of economic and social exclusion. So what exactly we did? We had these sort of global scan. I mean, I work at the Coady International Institute now. We are a institute based in Canada, but we have our graduates and partners in over 130 countries, and then there are around 10,000 graduates. So we actually reached out to them, and we asked them, are there examples? And after doing an analysis of that, and on the other hand, IDS, the Institute of Development Studies at University of Sussex, they also reached out to their network, and that's how we sort of populated these examples. And then the final sort of the typology that we came up with, and this is not, first of all, it was such a typology of market-based approaches was lacking in our study. So we made an effort that, okay, how we can actually look at categorize these different approaches. So before I go into the typology, I also wanted to sort of put another context is, okay, where are the extremely marginalized situated? So if in a very simplified way, if we look at the economic system that we operate in, and it's with a lot of generalization, if we look at this as the economic pyramid where our economy is divided in formal and informal. So at the top of the pyramid is what we call the private sector, the corporate sector, a lot of small and medium enterprises, large companies, and that part of the formal economy, which actually contributes to the GDP. But below that, there's whole informal economy. And this is where we found that most of the examples, this is where the extremely marginalized people were living. And this is where they were trying to make a living for themselves. Now, what is that we came up with? So we actually sort of, after doing our scan, we sort of arrived at these 5 entry points for the most marginalized to get into market system. And I will actually go one by one with some examples to show how these entry points differ from each other. And obviously, there are a lot of overlaps as well, but there's some distinctive characteristics of each of these entry points. So I will actually go one by one with some examples. And after that, I will sort of provide like, okay, what are the key learnings from this work? So I'm going to start with the first one, which is making most of the assets. So people living at that base of that economic pyramid and facing that social and economic exclusion. One way to look at it is that, yeah, they are extremely marginalized. They don't have anything. But the flip side of that nobody has nothing. I mean, the people have assets, and if you really look at them from their position, they have certain skill or certain assets, and if you concentrate on that, and if you really are if you're working with them, then you can identify assets and skills that can be harnessed, further value can be added, and that's how the market opportunities can be created. So basically creating a pathway for that identified skill or asset and adding as much value as you can so that they can access market. So this one example that we found was in Swaziland, a small country in southern Africa bordering Mozambique and South Africa. There's this group of around 600 to 700 women, woman-headed household, many of them widows, extremely marginalized, and many of them were marginal subsistence farmers. But on the side, they were making these baskets from the local grass. And it was, they were just selling locally, but this initiative focused on how those baskets can be sold in high value market. So this company Gone Rural, which the women own themselves now, sells these baskets into high value markets in Europe, in other countries. And another example of similar nature is one where, so actually when this work was happening, the general manager of the company came and attended one of my courses here at Coady. So that's how I know that this example is real and it's happening. Another one is in northern Ghana, where again, an organization called Widows and Orphans Movement was working with extremely marginalized women, widows, and the condition of in that particular, the local traditions were such that once a woman becomes a widow, the treatment she's met is very cruel, degrading, horrific, and leaves her with very low confidence, no agency, and no rights, no economic rights. So this organization was working with on the rehabilitation of those extremely marginalized members, and they wanted to do something for their economic empowerment. And the NGO was doing things on their at their level through grants. And the director of that organization again came to attend one of the courses that I teach here called Livelihoods and Markets, and she's on the left hand side here, Fatih, and she really wanted to do, I mean, this market based approach to for those women. And then in her region, they this baobab tree, I actually, because I knew I was speaking to IFM graduates, so I pulled up the botanical name of that tree. It's a very iconic tree in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's called the tree of life. And all the parts of the tree are very, very useful for the local community. So what she started to do is to identify, there's the fruit of the tree baobab tree produces powder, and then there are seed. So she started to make oil from the seeds and the powder, and package it. Now she actually has registered a separate company to help the same woman who had actually really no hope of earning money, integrating into the market. So what exactly these examples tell us? So when you go and talk to the women who benefited from it, and also the founders of these organizations, they tell us that there are three things. One, that you're not focusing on the primary source of livelihood. The primary source of livelihood was mostly agriculture. So we didn't focus on agriculture. We focused on alternative source, which was almost like a waste for them. So the seeds of these tree were almost like waste, and nobody was actually looking at them as a resource, and women had full control over that. So they say that we don't produce, so you focus on those alternative forms of livelihood. And the second, that you're not producing a commodity, producing a product. So you add as much value to that asset as possible. Second, that, okay, you can produce something really good, but there is no value of it unless there is a market for it. So you have to produce for a market. So you can produce for a market, but there's no value if there is no margin. So they said that three things. You got to produce a product for a market with a margin. These are rural women telling you this. So again, this making most of the existing assets, like how you can add value to that to access markets. The second sort of entry point is around collective action. And there's a lot of work on this, not just with the extremely marginalized, but this is most effective when you talk about small producers with very tiny surpluses. If they want to access finance, access market, access infrastructure, it's really important that there are platforms where they come together. So, and this, we found many examples in our work where collective action was a very strong entry point to response to exclusion. Now, this particular example is from India, and there are many examples like this coming from India, and I'm sure a lot of the colleagues here would this would resonate with them. But this one was from the Self-Employed Women's Association. They have this company called Rudy, and it's a Gandhian model of local production, local processing, local consumption. And the key thing about this model is that there's about 25,000 smallholder farmers, and then there are some who actually produce pulses and spices. These products are then bought by the members themselves and processed and then packaged in these high quality products, which are then sold in the local economy itself. So it's the true Gandhian way of strengthening the local economy. Now, the way it works and the key learning was that the women were made in charge of that. They could actually decide what they wanted. So, for example, if somebody is very old and not able to go door to door selling for the product, she can work in the processing center. The younger members can actually go door to door selling. So that autonomy of them to be the managers of their own enterprise was very, very essential. And the other thing is, like, why such initiatives actually enable the most poor to be part of it, because it provided them the flexibility. So if you're a woman, then you have other household responsibilities, this care work. So you need flexibility to participate in economic activity, but also to focus on your household work. And this company, the biggest sort of advantage that we saw when we were actually exploring this was that during the pandemic, the turnover of this company went 3 times. When the main economy had closed and there were lockdowns, because they were operating locally, they were actually able to reach out and provide the goods and services to people. The third entry point, and many of the folks who work on and you talked about making market work for the poor, Shuman, and a lot of the value chain approaches, is that there are and it's very dominant sort of approach now in development, where we talk about integrating the poor into value chains and how to make market work for the poor. Now, in this one, if you look at the three critical component of the market system, I mean, at the center is the whole core transaction, where the enterprises are buying and selling from each other, and that's where a lot of the extremely marginalized are situated, where they are often producing goods and services and trying to look for a market for that. So that's one component, but then there are support services, be it finance or technical services. And then the third component is around the whole enabling environment. Now, what we found was that it required a very coordinated approach. It required a lot of intermediation for the most marginalized to be included in the value chains. It required a lot of targeted intervention with the private sector, with the service providers, and often with the local communities as well, just to look at that socio-economic aspect. So couple of examples I wanted to share where we thought that it actually worked, where the most marginalized were actually integrated into the system. So one example was from Vietnam, and this again, northern Vietnam bordering China, where these ethnic minorities were producing these organic, by default, organic fruits and vegetables. And how and it was one of the IFED projects, and when I went there, they were just starting to look at these very isolated communities and how they can be integrated into the market system. And when I say they were integrated, the role of the intermediary was very crucial, because through the project they were able to establish those links. The other example is very recent, is from Ethiopia. So one of again my graduates, he started and this was in the waste recycling space. Again, coordinating with the existing small and medium enterprises so that they can start engaging with the most marginalized. Again, very targeted, dedicated work was required so that these enterprises can start employing the most marginalized. And with that kind of work, this small enterprise, which started with one person, now employs 20,000 young male and female young Ethiopians in the waste recycling sector in Ethiopia. The core was that, okay, you had to be very targeted when you looked at inclusion. And the fourth sort of entry point was around how do you actually work with the employers. This was not so much about self-employment and enterprises, but how you actually work with the employers so that they can start employing or engaging with the most marginalized. And here, this is from Canada. There is this coffee shop called Tim Hortons. It's like a roadside tea stall in India. It's like a dhaba here. You will see Tim Hortons everywhere, and they very actively employ people with disabilities as their workers, not because they are very magnanimous and then they want to actually help and it's coming from their heart. No, because they say that it's because they are good workers. So they have a deaf person as their baker, and he is their most efficient employee. They have people with mental issues with mental health working with them, because they feel that some of them with dementia or other, that they don't want to interact with other people, but they are the most, because they get into a groove and then they work. They don't take holidays. So it makes economic sense for them to employ people with disability, and they're not doing this because of the goodness of their heart. Another example, which I thought would be interesting to share, is the role of the government in opening up the space for the employers to start engaging with the most marginalized. And here at the university, we have a center. It's called Center for Employment Innovation. And what we do here is to engage with the traditionally excluded population. So indigenous people, the Black population here, racially visible persons, new migrants, refugees, person with disabilities, old age people. So how do you actually engage them, engage their participation into the labor force, and how do you actually engage the private sector so that they start employing them? Now, so what here, what the government does, and in this particular program that we are part of, is that the government provides employment subsidy to the private sector and also to the social enterprises. And with that subsidy, what happens is they say, okay, if you employ X number of person with disability, or if you employ X number of indigenous people, we are going to cover part of their wages for a certain period of time. 15 hours, $15 per hour is the minimum wage. So the government will pay $10 out of that. Now, and these transfers are conditional, that the people have to get certain training and they have to meet certain quality requirement. It does two things. One, yeah, obviously it's an incentive for the employer to because they are getting the subsidy, but also it actually builds a culture that, okay, yeah, because there's a lot of perception about people with disability or certain population that they are not good workers or they can't do it. So that perception, the culture in the company changes, and they end up employing them full time once the subsidy is over. And from the supply side, for the people who want to get employment, sometimes they will not get entry into these companies, but because of this program, they are able to actually have access, have opportunity, and are included. So that's we didn't find many of these examples, but there were some examples where the employer was proactively, or the government was trying to create employment opportunities in the marketplace. Finally, the last in the typology, and I think this was the most common that we found in all of our examples, and this one was not purely market-based. There were a lot of donor support, a lot of external interventions were there, and this was the approach of a leg up. That's the graduation approach, where a lot of pre-market social protection kind of work is required to be done, so that the most marginalized can be engaged in the marketplace. And it's and I'm sure some of you are working on this graduation approach. Was first sort of piloted by BRAC, but there are many organizations who since then have piloted it. So it's a sequence package of interventions. And I think more or less, I mean, and this depends on the context as well, but there were like 5 key elements to this approach, that you either through micro leasing or you transfer an asset, or you provide a grant, or you provide a placement to the person. So there's a grant component, there's an asset transfer. But attached to that is a very strong component of training and support. So if you need to vaccinate the cow, you need to have proper handling of the milk, and you have to have like a place where you can sell. So a lot of training and support so that they can properly use the asset. The second component, the third component was around providing coaching and mentoring. That was very, very essential to the approach. The fourth element was around access to savings mostly, but also other financial services. But along with that, because you're talking about the most marginalized, there was also need for providing temporary consumption support. Now, just one example where, because I was actually involved in this myself with a colleague, we actually used to provide training to this USAID project in Ethiopia. So in Ethiopia, I mean, in the population of 120 million people, there are about 10 million people who are chronically food insecure. And the government there actually provides them a transfer so that they can feed themselves. And every year that transfer takes place. So there, the idea was that how some of these households can be moved out of that food aid and can be integrated into the market. So there are a sequence of support that is starting with forming like they call it VSLA there, the savings and lending programs, like a self-help group. And then with that, you put them in group, and then you transfer the asset. Along with that, you provide business training, financial literacy, and then towards the end, you look at integrating into the market or linking them to the buyers and suppliers. So it's the market push where you actually are creating assets, building assets. You are creating or providing access to finance, and slowly building the business skills, the financial literacy. And then on the market side, you are actually working with the suppliers so that they can help them pull towards the market. So this was the most sort of and this program currently works with 10 million people. A lot of learning around that, and a lot of progress as well. I mean, so this particular approach was, I mean, there were a lot of studies done on this one with a lot of positive result, but also a lot of questions as well. So for example, here, I've been going there for the last now 12 years. One challenge has been that a lot of the people who've got support, they have increased their income, they have increased their assets, but they don't want to be called graduates. They are not graduating. And the reason is that once you graduate, you lose that subsidy. So there's like, so how do you actually make sure that people continue to they get out of poverty, but don't rely on that social protection? So there's a lot of learning there. So finally, I think I took more time. So these are the 5 sort of, these might not be the only pathways, but what we found in our work that these 5 pathways help or at least provide a direction or a way for the most marginalized to be included in the market. So what exactly, so how does this happen? No, there are the hard factors, right? The asset, the skill transfer, the capacity building. These hard factors are important, both for building the individual agency, because when you live in that kind of situation, when you live in that kind of social and economic marginalization, sometimes it is the mindset that needs to change. So the hard factors are very, very important, like assets, skill, but the soft factors are as important, whether it's building the self-confidence, self-esteem, building the agency of the individuals. At the same time, the group action for ensuring on hard side, ensuring the access to market, input, training, but on the soft side, building that social capital. helping each other and to overcome some of the social, traditional, cultural barriers and norms are as important when we look at the integration of the most marginalized. And final, this is my final slide, Shumon, is who actually pays for all of this? There's a lot of talk, as Shuman, you were saying that there's a lot of talk about market-based approaches in solving poverty, but who actually pays for it? So in many of our examples that we looked at, there were very few where it was purely commercial. Very few examples, like I showed you about the Tim Horton. It was the lot of components that required addressing those social barriers, required external support, whether it is donor, whether it's government, whether it's coming from members themselves or social enterprises. And that's when you actually help the integration into the market. So there were and now I think there are corporate social responsibilities and other, but again, you will put them more towards like grant, not a purely B2B or commercial model. So with that, I think I'll stop now. Hope we can have a conversation. Happy to answer a few questions as well.
Thanks a lot. Can you guys hear me? Audible? Yogesh, am I audible?
Yes,
Shuman.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Thanks a lot,
yes.
Yogesh. What kind of the sense that I got is the work that you've done. It also fits in well with the socio-ecological model, because you're talking about starting with addressing human agency and identifying existing skills and assets. So that's at the individual level. Then you're talking about at the community level, the social capital, if you like, organizing kind of collective, at the collective level. And of course, there is also kind of coordination with other actors in the market system, engaging with employers, and also this wage subsidization for persons with disability, and the kind of leg up that is pre-market social protection. That's for the government. So I see your 5 pathways addressing different kind of layers of the socio-ecological model. So I think it's really powerful in that sense. So to kick off, my one question that I had is what are the other areas, because we also work a lot in advocacy, apart from the social protection and wage subsidization. Are there any other areas that we think government should step in to make markets work for the poor, and where we can advocate on that? What could be other potential entry points for the government?
Yeah. So I think that whole social protection, it is in many cases that is required, because we are talking of extreme marginalization. But also, I think in terms of very targeted interventions. So I gave you the example of the Now program here. It's a very, very expensive program, but it does lead to the result. So sometimes those very, very targeted intervention that go beyond the social protection. That's like the foundation, the base. But what we found that the most marginalized need a leg up, even for them to start engaging with the market. So I think it's more than social protection, and also I think it's more not looking at them as a very homogeneous group, but looking at the heterogeneity within the most marginalized, and how a very tailored, targeted approach can help. And also, I think incentives. So how do you actually incentivize the private sector if they want to engage, if they want to? So I think what we found in the example I shared was the 2 year after the subsidy was provided, the employment subsidy. It was not that the people who were employed, that's fine, but the private sector actually started to employ other members from the community. So for example, in indigenous communities here, if 2 youth were working, because other members from their community saw them working in the private sector. They started to be the role model for the others. So the initial cost of actually doing that that very costly program was very high, but the ripple effects of that, both from the supply side, where the communities find motivation, find pathways for engaging in market, also on the demand side, where the private sector actually is more inclined to hire them.
Thanks. That's very helpful. Thanks, Yogesh. My second question was, and I'll stop after this, and I'll open it up to the floor after this. Like many of us have worked in this market systems training, but what in my own personal experience is that it is kind of often easy to quantify the impact of some of the short-term impacts of some of the simple interventions we do. But are there any methodologies to assess, what are the long-term systemic changes that our interventions are creating? Because often we do implement a lot of activities in market strengthening, but they are short-term impacts, and that's easy to quantify. But what are some of the long-term market system changes? Are there indicators on that, and are there ways to measure that?
Yeah. Ours was we just like looked at examples as they stood, and some of them were like long standing, but there is a lot of work going on in the space now. The whole randomized control trial, the work that Abhijit Banerjee and his team is doing is around actually looking at the long term, and they have very interesting insights, right? So I think their first book, Poor Economics, they didn't speak very highly of microfinance or microcredit. They said like, okay, the impact of this is not very certain. But when you look at some of their recent, the post work, some of the recent work, what they are saying now is that if the poor were engaged in certain economic activities before they got microfinance, if they were already operating something, and it could be small, big, if they were already operating in the market system, and if there was an infusion of external finance, whether it's microfinance, then there was a significant change in their assets, in their income. This is their recent work that talks about it now. So there are those very quantifiable sort of example, but then there is at here what we do is like a lot of this is those soft factors. It's like you really can't measure them in numbers. So let me give you an example from like this work when we were doing this Rockefeller project. I went and interviewed 100 people with disabilities in rural and urban Uganda. And I went to really remote rural areas where there was like civil war went on, and there were high incidences of disability because people were subjected to wars and local sort of violence there. I met one woman, she a very old blind woman, and her husband was killed by the militants when she was very young, and she had 7 children at that point in time, and nowhere to go. And she was born partially blind, and like so partially blind, she couldn't do much. So what would a woman in that kind of environment with 7 children do? Like what kind of livelihood options, and how would a market help her? You would think that no, that's like the only thing is like it's like social support, like she should rely on the family and the government, and there's hardly any government, so what support? You know what she told me, and we engaged in this long conversation. She said that her father used to brew alcohol, and growing up, although she was blind, she could actually she could smell things. So on the side, she started brewing alcohol just to feed her kids. And she became very, very successful. So when I went there, actually, her alcohol was sold in bottles with branded. And when I asked her, okay, and then she was able to actually send her kids to school. Some of them graduated. I asked her, okay, what did you, like, what is your learning? How you were able to do it? So, you, in Hindi में हम लोग बोलते हैं आवश्यकता आविष्कार की जननी होती है. It's like I had to do it. I had to do something. And the only, I was blind. I had no land. And so the only thing is like I just relied on what I was capable of. And I just like built on that. I had no other. So sometime she had to be innovative in order to just survive. But so then I asked her, are you really successful? She's like, yeah, I'm very successful. I own land now. My kids are going to school. But she said that, yeah, I mean, economically, I'm successful. But when I look at the social side, the people surrounding me and people still can take advantage of my blindness. I'm still included because I'm a woman in that village. So those factors are so so I mean the studies, these randomized controlled trials will tell you that she's like very successful, but will not tell you those socio-cultural barriers.
Yeah. Thanks. That was a very, very powerful kind of case, Yogesh, and also it talks about the fact that even if people might seemingly be in a very hopeless situation, they do have certain capacity, some agency they do have, which we can need to kind of support. Yeah. So I'll go to the chat box. Dharmendra has raised an important. He's made a comment and then raised a question. He's said that. Ultimately, for development to be sustainable, it has to look into the market, because we are in a capitalist market-based economy, whether we like it or not. So, and he's congratulated you on this, but he's also asked a question that often when we have these subsidies or these doles, if you like, many of them might have objection to the word dole, but so how do we ensure that kind of how to make people get out of the habit of getting doles? So, and then. Yeah, because the dependency might happen. There's a genuine concern about this.
Yeah. Hello, Dharmuda. I think Dharmen was my immediate senior. I actually did my first internship. My first development experience was under his leadership. And I remember it was in Aga Khan. I hope it's the same Dharmendra. It was in Aga Khan Foundation, AKRSP in Gujarat. And it was my first OT. And he was the team leader there. And my first day of arrival there, he took me to a village and he just dumped me there for a week. And that was the best, I think, that could have happened to me as a young professional, to learn about the social systems and about farming. And so I hope you remember that, Dharmu. So,
Not me. I'm from Suman Sen Gupta's batch. So,
sorry.
but it's a nice story. That's how we learn.
I'm sorry, it was Nikhil's batchmate, Dharmu. So it's a very important question, Dharmendra. And I gave you the example from Ethiopia, right? So it does, these approaches do help. And even the work of Abhijit Banerjee, he actually looked at the example in Ethiopia. And they concluded that people were better off. They had more assets. They were more resilient, but they still wanted to have the government transfer coming in, where we found that the dependency was not so much at the individual producer level or the individual entrepreneur level, is if you actually begin that from the start. So for example, the example in Ghana, where the widows, the organization working with the widows, they don't get any subsidy. they get zero subsidy when it comes to buying raw materials. So when those women bring those baobab seeds, they are paid a fair market price and they don't get any additional quote unquote dole. No transfer on that front. But where you need support is for that social enterprise that is buying from them and processing the seeds into oil. That social enterprise needs patient capital or concessionary development funding, not necessarily the producer. Now you can argue that, okay, how long that support will continue. So I think there is a continuum. For some things, for example, training, capacity building, the ongoing support is required, but for pure commercial activities, I think it's better that it's not, you don't introduce subsidy into that commercial relationship. But your question is very, very fair.
Yeah. And Yogesh, I think, Esther Duflo and Abhijit Banerjee, they also write at length about these poverty traps. And when people are in poverty trap, then you need intense engagement and intervention by the government. But after that, it needs to go to the next level where once they are out of the poverty trap, then the agency comes in. I think that's a question that I think Dharmendra was asking about, how we can. Yeah, it's interesting, fascinating. So any other question from anyone else? Happy to take a comment on the box and I can articulate it. Or if there's anyone, please raise your hand or just speak out.
Yeah, raising hand is becoming difficult, Shumon. I don't know if I can
Okay.
ask. Yeah.
Indrajit, over to you.
Yeah. So thanks, Yogesh. Lovely presentation and very, very insightful stories. I have two questions. One is that did you use any specific definition of extreme poverty in this case? What did you consider an extreme poverty? And the second question is, did you find any difference between the rural versus urban extreme poverties? And kind of intervention that is more useful for rural versus more useful for urban?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, we actually didn't want to focus on only one definition. For example, the poverty line definition of the World Bank. However, we did look at that, but we were looking at the intersection of the economic and social marginalization. So and the reason was that, yeah, we could have actually just said, okay, this is the economic and 2.15 poverty line, that's extreme poverty. But we really wanted to see the social marginalization and the different factors, be it ethnicity, people with disability. So very intentionally, we actually devoted a lot of time. How do we find the example of most marginalized? Okay, what would be the example? So we started looking, okay, yeah. So if you look at marginalization, gender is one. So that's like one form of marginalization. Okay, so if we look at women, then how about women in rural areas? Okay, so that's another form of marginalization. How about if they are from a tribe, that is marginalization? That's a third set of. How about they are widow? That's another marginalization. How about they are disabled? That's another. So that's the kind of pathway we went. And for our field work that we did in Uganda, we looked at those extreme marginalized examples. So there was one, and then we also found that maybe the market-based approaches are not for everybody. So let me give you another example. We went to see, there was one disabled woman, a farmer, a smallholder farmer. And she has a very small plot of land in like very sort of degraded part of the village. And she was growing maize. And when she took me to her field, and she was not able to walk, so was physically disabled. So she was just like somehow managed to go there, and she was using a hand sort of hoe to plow her land. And as I was going to her field, we were passing by these other farms which had soybean all over it, cash crop. So I asked her, like, okay, you're so poor. Why you don't grow soybean yourself? Why you are just like, first of all, you're planting late and then you are growing maize. It's like, yeah, and so the answer she gave me, like, it opens your eyes, like, okay, that's why you need to actually see people where they are. She said that, look, there are many reasons why I don't why I don't grow soybean. One, she said, I actually don't need that much cash. The cash I need is for buying salt, buying soybean, and sometimes if I need medicine. Second, if I get cash, where will I keep it? She was like so marginalized that her biggest fear was a monkey who would come and destroy her crop, because monkeys also thought that she's disabled and she can't protect herself. So so I asked, so what kind of market intervention would help her? So you know what she told me? Like, so she's like, okay, how, like, what can help you? What do you really want? Or how you can come out of this situation? The answer she gave me was like, if somebody can give me a tricycle, I've been wanting that for many years. If there was a tricycle, I don't need anything in life. I don't need any subsidy. I don't need any support. So and so there's so many NGOs might have been working to support her, but if there was like one tricycle of $50, could end her poverty the way she wants it. So so that was the situation in the rural context. To your other question, Indrajit, what we found that in the rural context, the sectors are very important. Okay, and because most of them, agriculture is the main source of livelihood, and it's like mostly subsistence, informal agriculture, but many of them are also farm laborers, not owners, but farm laborers, and for them, the diversification of the livelihood portfolio was more sort of important, because this is very high risk. And they pool their resources, and if you actually guide them to one value chain or one product, then you're actually increasing their risk manifold. So what people do, people actually, particularly in rural areas, more than market or income, if you're extremely poor, you hedge your bet against something, right? So you hedge it against helping somebody for non-monetary work, so that person can help you when you are in need. You will grow crops which can help you feed yourself rather than growing for market. So that's what we found in rural areas. I think those sectors were very important, and I think the other aspect was the isolation. So sometime what will happen is that if there are these all-inclusive programs where the claim is that everybody is included, we are not excluding everybody. So for example, there is the spraying service in Africa. Many places they spray to avoid to avoid like spread of disease or like malaria and all. So the spray will happen everywhere. Yeah, but what will happen, what you will see, that if there is a disabled person, or if there is a marginalized person living in far remote areas, they because they're so invisible, they are just not visible, they will be totally left out.
Yeah.
So in that case, you need a very targeted intervention. Unless you target them, rest assured they will not be reached in the inclusive agenda. Whereas in the urban areas, the issues are different. The legal protection if you are selling on the street, right? Because in urban areas, again, survival is huge. It's not that yeah, you may have access to more markets, you have more opportunities to earn better living wage. So the financial capital might be easier to access. But the other forms of, in terms of your legal rights, if you are working informally, that's very, very hard. So some work around their legal protection, access to affordable capital, those things we found more relevant.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point, a good question, and a very important point in general, because we are seeing increasing urbanization and migration from rural to urban areas. And unfortunately, when they go to urban areas, some of their skill sets are not applicable. Their social capital that they have in rural areas, the networks, that those get fractured completely. So that's an important piece in itself. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
That's a very
you know,
interesting question. Sorry. Go ahead.
in the same work, when we were doing this work in Uganda, what I found was that there were 26 wholesale markets in the city of Kampala, and 25 out of those markets were private markets. When I say private markets, the marketplaces were owned privately.
Privately.
And if you want to sell there, you have to pay a fee to the private sector provider. And so the space itself is very, very crucial in the urban areas. The natural capital of owning space, having a space there is huge.
Yeah. Thanks. Yogesh, there's another very interesting question, very interesting, I would say, by someone called NP, if you could say your full name. The question is about, has there been the case where market inclusion has led to social inclusion? Like economic mobility has also led to social acceptance or social inclusion.
Mhm.
Right. Thank you. So Yogi, this is Naveen Prakash, by the way, for others who don't know.
Okay.
But he's my batchmate. The question that I actually had in mind was essentially looking at, because many places I see, while there is market inclusion for at least some of the folks, some of the families, or let's say a group of people from the marginalized community start doing well financially, but they are still not accepted socially. So in India, for example, Dalit or some other places, even though when they come out because of government interventions or market interventions from poverty, but they're still not getting socially included in the various social programs. What impact and what interventions do you think can change that in terms of from a market perspective, so that also leads to social inclusion?
Yeah, great question, NP. So nice to see you here after a long time as well.
Yeah, I put my name NP for you only. Okay. Yeah.
Great question. This is a very, very important question on economic inclusion, economic access, economic empowerment, and social empowerment. And I would also add political empowerment there too. And we had a research project funded by the government here, IDRC, where we're looking at the intersection between economic and political citizenship. And there is the household economy, there is market economy, and then there is this society or your local community. If you look at if somebody is economically empowered, and we found a lot of examples where a woman has become the head of the cooperative or head of the union, she's very vocal. She's also able to become the head of the Gram Panchayat, and she's doing very well. So what we have seen is that economic empowerment can lead to building confidence, building agency, and more participation in the social spaces, in the political spaces. So the market economy can help you get that confidence that can translate into creating more space for you socially. But the hardest to change is the household economy, the household relationships. Even I think Indra Nui, the PepsiCo head, I think, right? She said one time that her mother-in-law used to tell her that once you enter into the garage
Leave
of
your
our
crown behind.
house,
Her mother.
yeah,
Her mother
her,
told her.
Mother-in-law.
No, her mother told her actually.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
her mother. Okay, leave her crown behind.
exactly. So
Yeah.
those spaces, those household spaces, are the hardest to change. And but what we found, NP, was that the economic pathway, I think, is the entry point, which actually gives them a lot of confidence and recognition. So the example I showed about Ghana, I've been going there for the last 10 years, and with the same woman, like the same widows. I used to interact with them in 2010, and I go and interact with them now. I'll tell you the difference. Like what happens is, so before they were like very shy, traumatized, not come to meetings, or very shy, not even talk to the strangers like me, okay, because they were so marginalized. Now with them becoming economic agents, so now what they do, they buy these seeds from the local community, including from men. And instead of money seekers as widows, they actually are money providers now. They actually give money if they buy seed from outside. So that's such an empowerment. That gives them such an, that actually I'm not money seeker, I'm actually giving money to men and other in the community. And that sense of confidence is the real empowerment of them, which actually helps them out of that cycle of not only economic poverty but also social.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for that.
Excellent. So, is there any other question?
Shuman, Manmeet has had a hand up in the chat box.
Someone has sent a hand up? Okay, please go ahead. Please go ahead. I can't seem to see any hands up. Yeah, but please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you, Shuman. Really interesting discussion. Yogesh, my question is around the BRAC graduation approach. Okay, I should not call it BRAC, but graduation approach in general. I understand that the movement across the poverty ladder is not unidirectional. People keep jumping up and down. And even in your example, you discussed that, people were hesitant to move to the next to the next step because they thought that the support that they're getting in terms of subsidy or the social support from the government, that they would no longer get that support if they advance to the next stage. But and on this basis, on this ground, I have three but related questions. One, do you think there is a way we can ensure a unidirectional movement, that people only keep advancing, they don't come back to their, or they don't get worse with time? Two, how can we make this change sustainable in the sense, if we try that, we give them some kind of intervention, and if they do not advance to the next step, they at least remain wherever they are and they do worse with time. And number three, do you think these pathways out of poverty are different for extremely marginalized group vis-a-vis some other group who is not as marginalized as them?
Yes. So great question. So let me look at the last one first, in terms of the pathways for the most marginalized. I showed that economic pyramid in my slide. So the extremely marginalized are at the very bottom of that economic pyramid. They are not even at the market frontier. So for poor to start engaging with the market, and I'm not talking about extreme poor, for the poor to start engaging with the market, there are challenges related to, and there are barriers related to skills and infrastructure and access to market, finance, policy, all of that. So you need to build ladders for them to climb towards a more formal either employment or enterprise. So they need those ladders. For the extreme poor, forget about the ladder. They need a stool to get onto the ladder, because there's so much marginalization. They need that pre-market support, whether it's giving them access to an asset, or micro lease the asset so that they can start building on that. So I think that's the difference between like the poor and the absolute poor. And often, the market based approaches, even if they try to include the poor, they tend to exclude the most marginalized, because they are just not, they are asset based, the products they are making, their services are just not ready to benefit from the market. So that's so that's the answer to your last question. What was
And
the,
that's the leg up you talked about, right? That's a leg up in your typology.
Yeah, that's a leg up.
Yeah.
The BRAC model, yeah, there's so many of the proponents of that model consider it to be very successful, and there are, I think, 99 pilots or some other forms of graduation approach is being implemented across the globe. The World Bank actually started a whole new program, what they call it, Program for Inclusive Economies or something, PEI. So there's this whole body of work that is happening now around graduation. There are some things that there's some lessons which I think do point towards a better way for building assets, building skills. So for example, these are some of the things are conditional if done in a true sort of BRAC or other model, that those 5 components that are core to the model, if they are done correctly. So for example, you can't just like transfer the asset and don't provide the technical support, don't provide the financial literacy and the life coaching. If you don't have a place to save, and if you don't have that consumption smoothing support while the household is able to make use of the asset. So the combination, I think, is critical. Now, once the asset is built, and the asset accumulation and skill building is really key. Once that is built, then that provides them, it actually provides them the access to that ladder, and then it's up to them how they want to go about it. So there are certainly certain advantages, and if they are into an economic activity, further sort of inducement or further access to more capital will hopefully help them towards that market that previously they didn't have access. So I think critical is the asset building part of it, and if they are very extremely marginalized, then I think that collective action is also crucial.
So do you think the dosage or the frequency of intervention or the fidelity would increase with every step that they advance to?
Yeah, so I think, what, let me share this push and pull slide. So when you talk about like extremely marginalized, so sometime, they are not even included in for example, the VSLAs, the savings and lending group, because they are considered too risky. So you're not excluded because you are disabled. You are excluded because the perception is that you are more risky. So once they get rid of that perception, then it can help in the process of graduation. So that initial leg up is really important. Many a times, once you get rid of, so in Ethiopia, what we did when we were doing this pilot, and when I say we were basically providing them capacity building, training support. We were training the people who were implementing the project. So when they were actually doing the linkages with the microfinance institution, the microfinance institution found these households, the chronically food insecure household, to be like, oh, I didn't share the slide. Let me share the slide. So the microfinance providers, they thought that they are very, very risky, and they didn't want to extend even the small amount of loan that they extended to not so poor household. So the program piloted a loan guarantee scheme with them. This was a tapered way that, okay, initially, if they are not able to pay, then the program will cover 100% will provide 100% of the guarantee. But then in the second year, the guarantee would go down to 70%, and then if they are able to save and return to the microfinance, then there is no need for that guarantee, and then they will be considered, okay, yeah, they can actually borrow, they can have the direct relationship with the microfinance providers. Yes, so that at the individual level, these steps do work if followed, but at the program level, I've been looking at this particularly in Ethiopia, the whole productive safety net program since it began. The role of external funding into the program, because it's like 10 million people, it is continuous. Just recently, I heard that the USAID has approved another $2.2 billion to continue. So on one hand, you can say that's a very successful program. That's why it is continuing, and maybe they are including new household into the program. But this kind of support, and the other thing, Monmeet, is that as you said, because we are looking at people who have very fragile livelihoods, and people move in and out of poverty. So I remember back in, I think, 2012 or 2013, we had actually, it was very, very successful. The program was actually showing very, very good results, and we wanted to do an evaluation. And these evaluations take like 6 months, 1 year. By the time our consultant went there to do the evaluation, that year there was a major drought in Ethiopia, everywhere. And then the same household who we thought were doing much better, they had assets, they had income, and because of the drought, they all went back. So those things are also there. I hope, I mean, it's not a complete answer, but I hope.
No, this was helpful. This was helpful. I connected a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, is there any other question? So one quick one from my side again, Yogesh, were you kind of, I have worked with this organization called Concern Worldwide.
I have left a question for Yogesh. If he can read and then respond, you may proceed.
Have you is there a okay, yeah, which is one second. Who that's Biplav, right? Biplav, why don't you read it out yourself? Would you mind doing it?
A little bit patched on data, that's why I typed in. My data is a little inconsistent. That's why I typed it in. Doing
Okay.
the video call is
no worries. So Yogesh, what Biplav has an interesting question. He's saying that India has been a model of gender inclusion, which has been self-help group driven and state sponsored, Internet Act, financial inclusion and market access. Compared to that, Bangladesh is mostly JLG based, private sector NGO led, BRAC Grameen led, and internet financial inclusion, and ultimately market access. Given that geographically we are similar, why Bangladesh is ahead of India? Guess their per capita is ahead of India, or was it some time back?
Shuman, you should answer that question. You're in Bangladesh right now.
Yeah, I can answer that, but okay. But what you
yeah, you start and then I'll follow.
right.
don't-
So one is that it's not. I don't think it's proper to compare the Bangladesh statistics with Indian statistics because they are not comparable. Simply, they are not comparable in terms of scale and all that. And also, if you see per capita foreign aid that has come to Bangladesh, that is substantially higher than it has come to India. And also in Bangladesh, the NGOs have played a very, very big role, and which hasn't been the case in India. So the NGOs have facilitated this to a great extent, and also NGOs have been hugely supported. They're practically after the government in a way, and the garment industry. The NGOs are the next big employer in this country. So one really cannot compare the two fully. I would rather compare Bangladesh with some of the states in India. For example, Kerala. There's some very good evidence over there of how things have moved on. So that comparison, I don't think is kind of not a fair comparison, I would say.
Yeah. And just to add, Bappa, like around the sectors, that big focus on selected sectors like the garment sector and making export as the big focus also actually helped. I mean, the garment sector there, I think, is one of the biggest employers.
But in
But
Bangladesh,
Yogesh, garment is not a good example because garment is a skewed example located around the centers of Dhaka, not the entire of Bangladesh. BGMA and all of the rest of the garment. I happen to speak with that knowledge because we did do some work around, I can't quote, it was in the public domain around the Rana Plaza disaster. So garment might not be a correct representation, but it is a very microcosm. So when you talk about sector, the manufacturing, I think garment, it's sweatshop also, cheap labor also, no labor norms also. Still they're doing ahead. Still they are doing well. They don't have sufficient security to that extent in the factories, and that's where Rana Plaza thing also happened, and people were without support. So I
Biplab,
don't think.
I guess it's a matter of different sectors contributing to it. So it's not just government by itself, but government has made an impact in urban areas. But you're right; it's not the complete answer to it. Another aspect is also that there's a lot of remittance. Bangladesh depends a lot on remittance economy. So I don't have the data right now, but a lot of this development is also because of remittance economy. I don't have the data in terms of per capita what's the remittance, but I presume that it is much higher than in India. So, and in India also, if you see, if you disaggregate by states and regions, it's very, very kind of the progress is very skewed, and it's few regions which are probably bringing down India's average on the whole. So again, I think it might be a little fallacious to compare India as a whole with Bangladesh.
Sure.
Suman, one more thing that what comes to mind for Bangladesh, the survival strategies, because they have faced a lot of natural calamities. So those are very strong. And second could be that government doles would not be to the extent of what India has. And so the adoption levels are higher.
So I agree with you with the first part, definitely in a way. Again, this is anecdotal, this is not based on evidence, but in general, my own sense is that Bangladeshis are much more resilient. They seem to be much, much more resilient. Probably because also Bangladesh is much more vulnerable to climate change impact and natural disasters more than India is, I should think. And that has probably made them, it's a riverine kind of a country. So it's made them more resilient. So that I agree. About doles, I think the social protection programs in India is much stronger, has been much stronger. I should think that
that's what exactly I'm saying, because that's not there to that extent in Bangladesh.
Therefore,
exactly. The survival strategies will be higher.
Yeah, but it is the NGOs. You will be surprised to see the NGOs, national NGOs in Bangladesh. Like they are like big corporations in themselves, and then they have very intense, deep reach in the country. if you compare, if you see, take sanitation, like Bangladesh reached total sanitation, we still haven't. I don't think we have. Bangladesh has reached total sanitation long time back, and that's primarily because of the NGOs, the work that NGOs have done. So.
Yogesh, one small question for you. See, most of your examples are from Africa, but if you look at the Indian context, I mean, there are a lot of programs, projects which are going on. But when you look at the sustainability aspect, what comes in between is after you have got them market access, there's always a presence of existing market players who are very unethical in the way they operate. And that affects the sustainability in the long term. So the example you are giving that USAID continues the support for some time. So do you see any examples in India where the support should extend to 5-10 years so that the entire market model can be sustainable?
Oh, there are lot of things going on in India. I mean, I actually didn't show a lot of example from India because I know. I mean, many of you are based in India and know a lot more in more detail than I, because I've been away for past 15 years now. Although I continue to go back and because we have so much to offer to the world actually, including in this space. I mean, I think the biggest innovation that I see and we also talk about when I actually go elsewhere is the whole area around social protection and the use of technology in that. So the whole digital public infrastructure and how we are actually using that to extend not only social benefits, but if it actually fully materializes, and this whole idea of ONDC to ensure that the marketplace is accessible and the more inclusive it gets, I think that will be another answer to exclusion. So imagine like a rural producer, if it's on the platform and wants to sell her product to a consumer in another part of the country or world for that matter, and having access to a mobile phone and with so many opportunities for newer enterprises to emerge in the field of logistics to make sure that this happens is huge. So one is obviously there are programs like, I mean, the MG Narega and which essentially is a transfer for sometime productive, sometime non-productive work, but also I think how these can be used for building private assets. So, you know, a lot of those graduation approaches, they talk about building private asset, and that private asset would be used for increasing income, for accessing market. But how about if some of the transfers that happen now go towards building private assets, not just community assets? So there is a lot, and the bigger one, you know, out of all the pathways that I shared, the biggest one I think is around the collective action and the whole work, both on the policy side as well as on practice around farmer producer organization and creating this aggregation platform. There's a lot of I'm not sure how much actually has been researched and written about it, but there is a lot that is going on where I would personally like to go and learn more. That's why I go back there, because there's a lot we can offer in that space for including the most marginalized in market systems.
Thanks.
Suman, I think we should let Yogesh go now. It's been quite a while.
Okay. Yep. Sure. If there's no other question, but just add to that question about this comparison of Bangladesh and India. Let's also keep in mind that the Bangladesh individuals are very resilient, but the economy isn't. In fact, Bangladesh economy is now facing huge issues because of foreign exchange earnings have come down. The foreign exchange reserve has come down significantly. So it's much more fragile, much more dependent on the global economy than India is. So that there are different aspects to the comparison between India and Bangladesh. So, and one quick question, Yogesh, for you, and you have to respond right now. Have you had the chance to assess Concern Worldwide's greening graduation approach? They're talking about graduation, but with a climate change, with a yeah. Go ahead.
No, Shubhanda, no. But I have actually trained people from Consult Worldwide from like different parts, but no, I haven't actually looked at.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
if you work, I'll be happy to though.
Yeah, we can exchange some notes
Shumon,
after that. Yeah,
can I
absolutely.
jump in for a
Hand
minute?
is
Can I
raised.
jump in? Shumon, can I jump in for a minute?
Yeah, sure, Sandeep. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I have also served in Bangladesh, but I resisted myself from commenting on the issue. But I want to say that it has been truly a masterclass, and I think the length of the discussion proves how interesting it has been. I just want to make a few announcements. We are going to get the CEO of BRAC as friends of IFM lecture speaker maybe in April. So
Excellent.
we can address all our Bangladesh questions to him. And I'm also enthused by today's discussion, thinking of getting Abhijit Banerjee also as one of the speakers. So we will have a lot of discussion on poverty and market linkages in the coming months. I want to just request Yogesh that I have done a project with bamboo and women in Ghana. So next time you go to Ghana, do let me know, and I would request you to go and assess how that project has fared. That's about all.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
No, it will be great to get Abhijit and team here. That will be really good.
Yes, I know him. I'll try to get him.
Yeah,
And but
that's
Bragg certainly we will be getting him in April.
yeah, that's great, Sandeep. Yeah. Okay, so I will, and Nikhil has nudged us to close the conversation, so let me do that. And but thank you very much, Yogesh. Kind of to summarize what you have said, I can't summarize, but to kind of to give a perspective, like you have collected so much of evidence from all over the world, and then very neatly put it into, very elegantly place that into the 5 typologies, which is also useful. But also in this session, you have peppered it with a lot of anecdotes and a lot of stories, which makes it the whole thing much more powerful. So, and there are lots of successes out there, and this conversation which has ensued after that has also been absolutely fascinating. And I personally have learned a lot, and I'm sure all of us have learned a lot. So with that, I will close the session and hand over to Nikhil.
Good. Thank you, Shumon, and thank you so much, Yogesh. Very, very interesting framework that you gave us. And I, on a personal level, also have many questions, but I will take them up with you separately. Unfortunately, the format does not allow us more questions than this, but absolutely fascinating. And your work I know of, you've been at it, researching this area, working on this area for so long, and it's been wonderful for for all of us who have been on this call, and then later also, as I said, people will be watching this to learn from your extensive and rich experience. So thank you on behalf of the Alumni Association, Yogesh, for joining us, and thank you, Shumon, for moderating this wonderful session. So thank you very much, and yeah.
Thank you. It's been great.
Bye.
Yeah. Okay then. Bye bye. We can close.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks for coming.
Yep.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Thanks and good night. Thank you. Shumon, before you leave, you please make a small summary for our alma maters of today's discussion.
Okay. What does small mean? What is small? Half a page?
Half a page. Half a page. Half a page.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.